Well, this brings us to the fifth and final point in my hopefully hour-long podcast review here. Point 5. Unlike Game of Thrones, The Last of Us was willing to retain morally gray and controversial characters. The Last of Us kept the controversial ending to the video game, which is in many ways what made it so memorable after all of these years. And full spoilers, you know this going in. I assume most people watching this have already seen Last of Us TV show. Joel gets Ellie to the Firefly Rebels and thinks that it's to study Ellie for a cure or vaccine. But he finds out that in order to study her immunity, they need to dissect her brain, which would kill her. So to save Ellie's life, Joel goes on a rampage, killing all of the Fireflies, the rebel movement, including, trained doctors and immunologists who are increasingly rare in the post-apocalypse. So even disregarding, he didn't just take Ellie and run. To get her, he killed everyone. So they are in even less of a state to study a cure without Ellie. And the morality of both sides in this is completely ambiguous and provokes a lot of debate. It's what made it so memorable and why the game is still discussed so much. From the Fireflies' perspective, Joel thought bringing Ellie to the Fireflies would make a cure to save the world. And, Joel, you have been willing to kill relatively innocent people to get Ellie here. She is one more life laid down for that goal. That's what you've been doing this whole time, making so many sacrifices. We have to get the immune person here. She's one more we have to kill. And on top, but more importantly, the Fireflies are not presented as doing this for personal gain. It's because the survival of the species is at stake. This might help humanity take back the planet, expand beyond the quarantine zones. Not even expand. The quarantine zones are on the brink of collapse. They need this to save, if not the species, at least thousands of lives. On the other hand, the Fireflies didn't inform Ellie of this or ask her consent. I've seen actually news articles, this is a big topic of discussion, news articles with professional bioethics people reacting to the show saying this was negative for them, but they're not monsters. That the lack of informed consent, but still they're not presented as mustache-twirling villains. And for the ongoing story, I'll leave it that the consequences of Joel's decision reverberate into the story of the next game. There's only 2 games so far. Who knows if there'll be a third, or when it will come exactly. And they said they're going to adapt season... the second game will be split into 2 seasons, seasons 2 and 3. Maybe even if there isn't a third game soon, they would cobble together a 4th one. A lot of shows only have 4 seasons these days. Like Succession was only 4 seasons. This is going to be another giant 7-season show. So who knows what season 2 is, how good it'll be, because a lot of people thought it was controversial, but whatever. That those things have consequences. A theme of game, and themes are for 8th grade book reports. A theme, they said, is analyzing the depths you're willing to go to for people you love, even when those depths are objectively a bad thing. To have a gray thing like this. They kept that dark, morally ambiguous ending verbatim in the TV adaptation. They didn't whitewash it, they didn't soften the edges of it. It's not presented as a victory, but as Joel doing this very controversial thing. In contrast, Game of Thrones flanderized and softened all of its main characters because they wanted them to be likable. That the whole point of think of prestige drama protagonists. Tony Soprano, Walter White, Don Draper. These are morally ambiguous at best. And on top of that, they wanted, not just that would have been fine even for regular TV. These guys, these 2 morons, wanted the main characters to be likable. In contrast to all of that, because they were actively promoting and building a celebrity cult around the main leads. Actually think back to just how much hype there was around Maisie Williams or Kit Harington going into the later seasons that wasn't quite at that pitch level. And even in the early seasons, and even Kit Harington himself has said he was deeply uncomfortable with how much it became the Kit Harington show after the death and resurrection thing cliffhanger in season 5. He started drinking under the pressure. The actors themselves didn't want this, but to promote a celebrity cult of hype around the leads, both to make the show popular in general and to build them up for awards, because awards equal profile boost for Benioff and Weiss themselves. All ties together, rich tapestry here. They were trying to build up this amazing celebrity cult that these main leads could do no wrong. So it turned into that they're these amazing, ultimately poorly written characters. They became caricatures of themselves who weren't allowed to do controversial things anymore. Case in point, Tyrion. There was a widespread criticism, it was a relative meme among the critics that were starting to form, that he'd become Saint Tyrion. That they put him on a pedestal when they went off book in season 5, really at the end of season 4, that in the books, he brutally kills Shay, even though she probably didn't have much choice in having sex with his powerful father. He has no idea if she did it willingly. That for all she knows, he threatened her, and what's she going to do, resist the hand of the king? And she's begging him for mercy as he strangles her to death. The TV show changed that to have her go for a knife so he wouldn't seem bad for killing her. And it just went on from there, to the point that he is almost nothing like the original Tyrion. And he is nothing like the Tyrion of the books, that when Tyrion goes to the Eastern Continent and he flees there in Book 5, this is some of the darkest stuff Tyrion has ever done. Just his mental state becomes a very dark character. He poisons people. And the wisecracking, witty, but dark and cynical Tyrion of the first 4 seasons, for lack of a better term, turned into this guy who makes puppy dog eyes while talking in a soft voice, and other people remark on how amazing and smart he is, even when he's not doing anything. Like when he's in Volantis and he's just talking gently to a prostitute who thinks he's awesome. In the book, his mental state has deteriorated so much that for comfort he has sex with a slave prostitute who clearly is too afraid to say no. He kills to survive, he poisons people. That not only was Saint Tyrion softening the character, it made him look stupid. And I've seen good-intentioned but not really looking into it channels going, why are Benioff and Weiss writing Tyrion so stupid? Why is their interpretation of him that he's stupid? Because his actions are stupid. They weren't looking at the inside the episodes and the commentary. In interviews and in the commentaries, they're bragging about how smart Tyrion is, like things that were incoherent, like, oh, Tyrion going to set up the White Hunt beyond the wall in season 7. They remark on how smart he is for this, that Benioff and Weiss didn't set out to write Tyrion as stupid. They themselves are stupid. They came up with a stupid plotline, attempting to portray a character as smart and failing. But that's just the intelligence. The other thing is the morality thing, that we have Saint Tyrion, who's this wonderful guy, everyone remarks on it, isn't brutally killing people the way he does in the book, where it's interesting that he's this morally gray but smart character. We stopped getting that, and this happened to other characters. Like, another big one is the Night's Watch mutiny against Jon Snow is very ambiguous in the book, because it isn't about, we hate wildlings, then it's nonsense, why would you let them through the wall only to then kill Jon? Wouldn't you kill him to prevent them coming through the wall? That makes no sense, and people just ignored that. Then in the book, if you're unfamiliar with this, they kill him because Ramsay Bolton sent a threatening letter saying he was going to march on the wall and destroy the North and stuff. And Jon said, screw it, I know I have my oath of neutrality, I was willing to let this go even though he killed my brother, but he is tearing apart the North even as the White Walkers are coming. I need to lead an army to fight him, to restore, that we can't have an enemy at our back like this. and the older officers who are really worried about breaking their oath of neutrality stab him before he can do that. They aren't mustache-twirling villains, and in the TV show they made it We Hate Wildlings, which really removed the ambiguity from Jon's actions, that it was a controversial thing he did. You know, it's probably the right one. Or Arya. Arya became, quote, Little Miss Badass, who never does anything controversial. What if Book Arya massacres the Frey women too? Now, I think Arya will be involved in that storyline. Maybe she won't personally kill all of the Freys. I think the Brotherhood Without Banners is going to play a role in that. But let's, for the sake of argument, say that it's like what the show did, where she poisons all of the male Freys in the TV show, but makes it a point to order all the women out, so she spares the women. What if, for the sake of argument, in the upcoming books, she poisons all the women too to completely destroy their bloodline? That's a huge if, I admit, but even sticking to the things we know about, like the Night's Watch Mutiny, Saint Tyrion, all of that, they're whitewashing everyone because they don't want controversy. They want them to be popular with the audience. They say, no, they need to be blameless, which is lazy writing. And this all builds up to the suspicion, based on other changes, that Daenerys' death in the books will be drastically different. The real story, yes, I use the word real story of the books, is probably quite different. That I think what's going to happen, the theory going around, not just me, is that she'll blow up the Red Keep by accident with the wildfire stashes within it. Or how about those refugees used as human shields who they mention in episode 4 of season 8, only to then completely forget about by episode 5? We think they re-edited this at the last minute. Maybe in the books, she rationally but coldly decides to shoot through human shields to end the war quicker, something like that. Maybe, just for example, she massacres the Lannister soldiers but not civilians, and explains to Jon, well, they massacred your brother Robb Stark's army under a banner of truce. They broke the laws of war first, which means we don't have to honor the laws of war for them anymore. They give up to the right to surrender when they kill people who are trying to surrender, which is a thing I actually agree with, that if you break the laws of war no longer apply to you. I don't feel I need to be the better man. It's when you break the rules, you become the enemy of humanity. That's the term they use for pirates under naval law. I'm a humanist, that you are the enemy of humanity if you break the laws of war, and I don't have to feel held to them. That's the moral impetus. That's what restrains people from, oh no, if I break the laws of war, no one will ever let me surrender again. That they can't just break them and say everyone else will be too honorable and will extend me the courtesy I didn't extend to them, and letting them surrender. So that's the whole argument. That's why I'm debating it here. That would be an interesting controversy. And what if, and this is all hypothetical, what if Jon is upset about this mentality because he's too honorable, and decides to kill Daenerys rather than go along with that? If I can't kill even these war criminals, I'm not on board with that. Still morally ambiguous. This is all for the sake of argument. What if something like that happens in the books? The running theory is that Benioff and Weiss panicked and realized that at some point Jon kills Daenerys over a disagreement about should we follow the rules or not, but she's acting rationally, just a little more ruthless than he's willing to do. And that him killing her would be much like how the Night's Watch stabbing him was morally ambiguous, not mustache-twirling villain mode on their part. But they panicked and thought, this controversy will make people hate us for killing Daenerys, so we have to make her so evil and unlikable that Jon will be blameless for killing her. It's this weird thing where they identify with the writing itself, that George R. R. Martin put in evil characters who he doesn't agree with, like killing Renly or stuff the Freys do at the Red Wedding. Benioff and Weiss seem to think, if I kill off a popular character, people will blame us. So we have to make sure they're not popular anymore. Or they did this a lot, but I think that's shockingly close to what might have actually happened, that they just traded one problem for another because they are short-sighted idiots. Oh, let's make him morally blameless for killing Daenerys by making her, within 2 episodes, pure evil, and using fascist imagery to the point that he kills her and is morally blameless. There is no controversy in Jon killing Daenerys as presented. The controversy is in how could you say she turned evil in 2 episodes? This makes no sense. That's what we think, that we've known they are liable to panic. Like, they panicked at the last minute, quite separate from the controversy thing. They panicked and changed the Jon Snow killing the Night King to Arya killing the Night King, who I don't think even exists in the books. But they said we changed that at the last minute because we thought people would think it was predictable. They're worried about being predictable, they're worried about being controversial. Whereas The Last of Us embraced that this was controversial. And in fact, most other Emmy-level things, again, Sopranos, Breaking Bad, Mad Men, the protagonists are all controversial people. Even then, you can rely on, they overcompensate, you can rely on the audience itself to do that whitewashing. Because House of the Dragon, a lot of the characters are morally gray. I mean, Daemon is light and dark in equal measure, is how they describe it. He's not a hero or a villain. Rhaenyra is flawed. Alicent is flawed but not evil. Even Otto isn't like evil, like the way Tywin is really rape is a tool of war. Otto wouldn't do something like that. And just all of these characters are very flawed, and Martin himself has praised that House of the Dragon managed to realize that on screen, that these are flawed but relatable people in a morally gray world. Game of Thrones didn't have, Benioff and Weiss didn't have the courage to do that. They didn't need to. You see fans. It's called what TV Tropes calls Draco in leather pants. That if you really like Daemon, you'll start thinking of him as a hero. If you really like Aemond, you'll start thinking of him as a hero and putting him on a pedestal, when they're actually great characters who are flawed. So you could have relied on the audience itself for that. They've done it for so many other Emmy shows. But they went above and beyond to even remove the controversy. And I hope the truth of that eventually comes to light with the later books. So the courage to keep the morally gray and controversial characters